I'm Katie Couric. Tonight, the Chief Justice of the United States is rushed to the hospital. John Roberts falls at his vacation home in Maine. We'll have the latest on his condition. Also tonight, FDA advisors are recommending the diabetes drug Avandia stay on the market, even though it may raise the risk of heart attacks. An about-face on the Iraq War. Some of its sharpest critics now say the U.S. is finally making progress. The big engine that could be a boondoggle. Why the government is spending billions on an engine the military doesn't want or need. The mystery of sudden infant death syndrome, a new discovery that could save lives.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Hello, everyone. We're beginning with late-breaking news. The Chief Justice of the United States is in the hospital tonight. 52-year-old John Roberts suffered a seizure at his vacation home in Maine today and was rushed by ambulance to the hospital. Jim Axelrod at the White House has the latest. Jim, what can you tell us?
Well, Katie, according to a spokesperson for the Supreme Court, Chief Justice Roberts will remain overnight at the Penobscot Bay Medical Center that's in Rockport, Maine, after suffering what they're calling a benign seizure. He fell on his dock after suffering the seizure at his vacation home about 70 miles northeast of Portland, Maine. Taken to the hospital, minor scrapes, given a thorough neurological evaluation. His office says he checked out and is, quote, fully recovered and will spend the night in the hospital only as a precaution. However, Katie, in 1993, Chief Justice Roberts suffered a seizure while playing golf for a long time after he couldn't drive. None of this came up during his confirmation hearings because it was thought that the seizure in '93 was an isolated event. Katie?
Jim Axelrod at the White House tonight. Jim, thanks very much. Now to health news that affects a lot of Americans. The million or so who take the diabetes drug Avandia, they can keep taking it. An FDA advisory panel acknowledged the health risks of taking the drug, but tonight it recommended that Avandia stay on the market. Here's Nancy Cordes.
An FDA panel voted overwhelmingly today that the nation's #1 diabetes drug is likely to cause an increase in the risk of heart attack. Still, the panel of scientists and doctors voted to recommend that the drug stay on the market, with restrictions or warning labels for high-risk groups like older people or those taking insulin. This despite a warning from one of the agency's own safety reviewers that Avandia may have caused 80,000 heart attacks or deaths in the 8 years it's been on the market.
Any drug used for the treatment of diabetes that increases the incidence or severity of coronary heart disease in patients with diabetes is unacceptable. It makes no medical sense.
Sales of Avandia have dropped 22% since a study in the New England Journal of Medicine first raised concerns back in May. Chicago endocrinologist Richard Hellman says he's stopped prescribing it.
It shouldn't be now, 8 years later, that we're deciding that we have a terrible risk problem here. We should have, from the very start, be designing and doing the studies that would have made it safer for all of our patients.
Avandia lowers blood sugar.
Avandia's maker, GlaxoSmithKline, insists its own studies show no increased risk. The drug maker has $3 billion in yearly sales of Avandia riding on this decision, not to mention the possibility of costly lawsuits. Houston attorney Mark Lanier won jury awards of $300 million for clients who took the painkiller Vioxx. He expects to represent about 500 Avandia plaintiffs.
In this case, GlaxoSmithKline was sending sales reps out to doctors' offices, telling the doctors this drug was cardioprotective, telling them it helped the heart, when the truth was the opposite.
Now the FDA must decide whether to take the recommendations of its advisory panel, and it typically does, meaning Avandia will likely remain a tool in the arsenal of many Americans with diabetes. Nancy Cordes, CBS News, Washington.
In other news, President Bush and Britain's new prime minister made a point of showing a united front today, especially on Iraq. They wrapped up a mini summit at Camp David, their first meeting since Gordon Brown succeeded Tony Blair. Brown says Britain and the United States share the same goal in Iraq, eventually transferring control of that country's security to the Iraqis. But the political process in Iraq ground to a halt today. Parliament went into summer recess without passing laws designed to stabilize the country. Lawmakers won't return for more than a month. They come back September 4th. And a new report out today tells of a building humanitarian crisis in Iraq. The relief agency Oxfam says more than 11.5 million people, 43% of the population, live in absolute poverty on less than $1 a day. 7.5 million children, or 28%, are malnourished, compared to 19% before the war. And nearly 19 million Iraqis, 70%, don't have access to clean drinking water. That's up 20% in 4 years. But there are positive developments to report as well. With that tonight, here's David Martin.
With 1 day left in the month, American casualties in July are the lowest since the troop surge began in February, and civilian casualties are down a third. U.S. officials attribute that to the dismantling of networks which make roadside bombs and to American soldiers protecting the local population. It would only take a few spectacular attacks to reverse those trends, but even critics of the war strategy are encouraged.
The moment that we got to Baghdad, everything felt very different from previous trips to Iraq.
Former CIA analyst Ken Pollack, who earlier this year published an article about Iraq titled "Things Fall Apart," now sees a sudden change in American fortunes.
This is the first time I have gone to Iraq and actually felt that the United States knew what it was doing and was actually creating some degree of progress.
Retired Marine General Jim Jones, who was conducting a congressionally ordered study of the Iraqi security forces, also came back from Iraq saying privately it was better than he expected.
By any measure, Iraq is still a deadly mess, and no one is claiming to see light at the end of the tunnel.
We have not won this war, and we didn't see something that looked like victory over in Iraq. All we saw was progress.
Just enough progress so that a critic like Michael O'Hanlon, who used to think the surge was too little too late, now believes it should be continued.
For me, gut instinct, just piecing all the information together, subjectively, I thought we should give it a few more months into 2008.
Which is exactly what the American commander, General David Petraeus, wants. Continue the surge into next spring, then start a gradual withdrawal back to the pre-surge troop level of 130,000 by the end of 2008. David Martin, CBS News, The Pentagon.
As the surge continues and the demand for troops grows, the Marine Corps is hoping a picture is worth 1,000 recruits. This one shows Corporal Gareth Hawkins re-enlisting as he lay on a stretcher in Iraq just hours after suffering a serious leg wound in a roadside bombing. He refused to be evacuated until he could sign up for another tour. The Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps says he may use the photo as a recruiting tool. The truth is, though, stories like Corporal Hawkins are few and far between. The Army is having an especially hard time keeping soldiers and attracting new ones. And it's had to lower standards just to meet recruiting quotas. How low? Here's Kimberly Dozier.
The longer the war continues, the harder it's proving to fill these ranks. A strong economy also means there are easier jobs around than this. So the U.S. Army is accepting a growing number of new recruits with everything from health and weight issues to lower academic test scores to the most disturbing, criminal records. The number of incoming soldiers with prior felony arrests or convictions has nearly tripled in the past 5 years. This year alone, the Army accepted some 8,000 recruits with rap sheets. Most are guilty of misdemeanors, but last year about 100 had felony convictions.
What's the worst?
Burglaries and narcotics are probably our two top categories.
What I need is to bring out that paper to you so I can get it signed.
In the Dallas recruiting office, Staff Sergeant Anthony Garcia says he enlists only those who are ready to leave that past behind.
Drug paraphernalia charges, it could be anything minor or some stuff major.
No violent crimes, but for major stuff like breaking and entering or arson, the military grants what's called a moral waiver. It's an old formula judges used to pronounce join the Army or go to jail.
Got a letter in the mail. Go to war, go to jail.
But today, recruits are going from boot camp to a hot war in Iraq. Former Pentagon officials call it a recipe for chaos.
In order for the Army to meet its quota, which is going up, they have to resort to taking more and more chances on people.
Some chances work out. Corporal Angelo Vaccaro was granted a waiver. He was awarded 2 Silver Stars after he was killed rescuing wounded soldiers. But then there's former Army Private Steve Green on trial for raping and murdering an Iraqi girl and killing her entire family.
The stakes are very high. You're going to give these people lethal weapons. So you better be damn sure that this man or woman has the self-discipline and the strength to be able to use that weapon only when he or she must.
Yet across the services, commanders are not told when someone has a record. The idea, with no stigma, the recruit has an equal chance to succeed.
We've always been an Army that's been known to give patriotic citizens second and third chances.
And they're risking their lives for those second chances. But officials admit the people they really want are being driven away by a dangerous and increasingly unpopular war. Kimberly Dozier, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Now to money matters. News that gasoline prices are falling usually comes with a warning. Don't get used to it. So consider yourself warned as we tell you gas has fallen 17 cents the past 2 weeks to a nationwide average tonight of $2.88 a gallon. That is the lowest price in 3 months. On Wall Street, after its worst week in 5 years, the stock market rallied today. The Dow gained more than 92 points, the Nasdaq 21. There's much more CBS News ahead, including a new program that's convinced thousands of fugitives to congregate in a very unlikely place. But up next, Eye on Your Money. Why are you paying for jet engines the military doesn't want or need? This week, the Senate takes aim once again at earmarks, those pet projects that lawmakers sneak into spending bills. New rules being considered would force senators seeking earmarks to identify themselves and their project at least 2 days before it comes up for a vote. Capitol Hill correspondent Cheryl Atkinson has been investigating congressional earmarks. Tonight, a jet engine that nobody wants. Well, almost nobody. Here's Eye on Your Money.
This is the military's next-generation strike fighter, the supersonic F-35 Lightning II. It flies so fast, the speed is classified. Pratt & Whitney has the government contract to make the jet's high-performance engine, but your tax dollars are also paying for GE to develop a spare engine, and it's cost you $1.6 billion so far.
The idea is that if GE and Pratt & Whitney compete, they'll build better engines that cost less and end up saving money. But here's where it really gets interesting. The military doesn't want the alternate engine. The Air Force and 2 independent panels have concluded it's not necessary and not affordable, and that the supposed savings from competition will never be achieved.
So why did Senator Ted Kennedy personally earmark $100 million tax dollars for the project this year alone? He wouldn't agree to an interview, but part of the answer has to do with where it could be built. At GE's Massachusetts plant in Kennedy's home state, where it would bring jobs. And Kennedy isn't the only one who wants to spend your tax money on the project. So does Congresswoman Jean Schmidt.
The military says, we don't want it, it's not going to save money in the long run. Why should taxpayers fund it?
History shows that competition works. It drives down price, spurs innovation, builds a better product, and saves money in the long term.
It doesn't hurt that the competing engine could also bring jobs to the GE plant in Schmidt's home state of Ohio. Meantime, the military has been trying to kill the project altogether, saying the tax dollars would be better spent for force protection and IED-resistant vehicles. Christian Lowe is a military analyst.
For 2 years in a row, the Air Force has asked Congress to take funding away from the program so they can devote it to other more urgent needs. And every year, Congress has come back and said, nope, you're going to do this alternate engine program.
The second engine is just one of many expensive add-ons to the defense budget. Just this year, senators on the Armed Services Committee tacked on hundreds of extra projects worth $5.6 billion tax dollars, much of it for hometown contracts. That includes the backup engine for the supersonic Lightning II, which remains on congressional life support against the Air Force's own best advice. Cheryl Atkinson, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
Leukemia has also taken the life of Tom Snyder. The longtime TV host was a pioneer of late-night talk and had an interview style all his own. Back in the 90s, Snyder hosted The Late Late Show following David Letterman here on CBS. But before that, he hosted Tomorrow on NBC for nearly a decade. Snyder announced 2 years ago that he had leukemia. He died yesterday at 71. Coming up next, the mystery of SIDS. Could a simple hearing test at birth determine which infants are at greatest risk? It's a heartbreaking mystery, sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS. Tonight, there may be a new way to determine which babies are most at risk. Despite a steady decline for more than a decade, thousands of babies die in their sleep every year for no apparent reason. More than 2,200 in 2004. Dr. John LaPook has more now about a simple test that could one day save lives.
We're definitely getting closer to making SIDS something from the past.
Dr. Daniel Rubens, the lead author of a new study examining 31 cases of SIDS, has discovered a previously unsuspected connection.
We found now, for the first time, that there's something going on in the hearing of SIDS babies. This is totally new and we've never had this before.
His study found that the group of newborns who later died from SIDS shared the same hearing test results. The scores reflecting inner ear function were significantly lower in the right ear than in the left, something not usually seen in healthy infants.
I'm suggesting that the inner ear plays a critical role in the control of breathing.
Rubin's theory is that damage to the inner ear, possibly occurring at birth, can fatally impair a child's ability to breathe normally. SIDS researcher Dr. Henry Krause calls the study provocative but preliminary. He says parents should continue to follow the steps already proven to reduce the risk of losing a child to SIDS.
Put babies on firm surfaces for sleeping. They should be placed on their back. They should not be overly swaddled.
This study does not mean we now have a hearing test to predict SIDS. But since hearing tests are already routinely being done on babies, we now have the opportunity to follow a large number of children from birth to see if SIDS can not only be predicted, but ultimately prevented. Dr. John LaPook, CBS News, New York.
Now to the world of sports scandals. Things got a lot worse today for Michael Vick. The Atlanta Falcons quarterback learned that one of his co-defendants has pleaded guilty in the dogfighting case and is now cooperating with federal prosecutors. Last week, Vick pleaded not guilty. He's been banned from training camp while the NFL conducts its own investigation. Coming up next, why hundreds of fugitives are now waiting in line to give themselves up. Right now in this country, well over 1 million people are wanted by the police. On Wednesday, Nashville will become the latest U.S. city to join an innovative program that's having remarkable success getting fugitives to surrender. Thalia Shuris reports it all began 2 years ago this week in Cleveland, the brainchild of a veteran cop.
We've got one charge. Is he a parole violator? We need to run his record. All right.
Pete Elliott is a man in perpetual motion. The chief U.S. Marshal in Northern Ohio, he's dealing with hundreds of people who are waiting to turn themselves in.
Look into the camera.
It's a program Elliott started called Fugitive Safe Surrender. The key, using churches.
This is the place where you can be assured that you're going to get safe handling to come in and to turn yourself in.
In Akron recently, Elliott partnered with Bishop Joey Johnson at the House of the Lord Church, which was converted into a full-blown courthouse, booking, fingerprinting, and most importantly, judges.
Obviously, you did the right thing today.
In 4 days, more than 1,100 people turned themselves in.
80% of the fugitives that have surrendered said they surrendered because it was a church.
In 4 cities around the country, almost 4,000 people have surrendered. Elliott thinks the program could net a significant portion of the 1.2 million fugitives nationwide.
Safety is a critical component of this program for both the fugitives and the police. Chasing criminals, even coming across them during a routine traffic stop, can be dangerous, even deadly.
7 years ago, Cleveland police officer Wayne Leon was killed during a traffic stop by a wanted man.
Turned out to be wanted on the run in Cleveland here for 7 months, and got out of his car and shot Wayne. So
just point blank?
Point blank, shot Wayne.
Officer Leon was a family friend. His death inspired Elliott to create Safe Surrender.
For each fugitive, that peacefully and voluntarily surrenders. That's one less dangerous confrontation our law enforcement officers have to have on the streets.
22-year-old Deshaun Singleton showed up in Akron to surrender for possession of crack cocaine, tired of running scared.
Said, let me just go turn myself in and get it over with.
Singleton faced a city judge.
We have one count of driving under suspension.
Then a county judge.
And I'm going to put you on maximum pretrial.
Thank you.
And just hours later was released on bail with a court date.
Don't let me down, all right, deal?
Everybody was helping me, so I was in a good position right here. I did the right thing. I turned myself in.
Ladies and gentlemen, U.S. Marshal Pete Elliott.
Pete Elliott was recently honored as a top cop by U.S. police chiefs. He gave the award to the widow of slain policeman Wayne Leon.
It's such a tribute to Wayne. It's an honor that it's done in his memory.
He's wanted on a gang warrant.
For Elliott, the real reward is making the streets safer for everyone. Thalia Ashuras, CBS News, Akron, Ohio.
And that's the CBS Evening News. I'm Katie Couric. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.